Let's talk about a couple of different ways of adding introductions to our songs. So here's a double bar line where the pattern starts, and I have a little 2-bar intro. This is the most basic intro you can find. An easy and effective intro is to simply use the first chord of the ensuing verse or chorus, and it can be played either in broken eighth notes or arpeggiated, depending on the tempo. Let's listen to this. So I'm just hovering on the one chord, or the chord that the next section starts on, whether you're starting with a verse or a chorus. In this case, it happens to be the tonic chord. And depending on the tempo, you can break it up. Sometimes a favorite way of doing that in 12/8 is to break the arpeggios up like this. You've heard things like that. So that's one easy intro. Let's go on to the next example. You can use a dominant chord as an intro. It makes a good intro. It can be suspended or a straight G7 chord, or altered with flat 9s or flat 13s or sharp 5s, depending on what suits the style of music. Let's listen to this example. So, dominant chord for a couple of bars leading into the tonic or whatever chord, again, you're starting on, be it your verse or your chorus. Let's go to the next example. And here we have a rubato, meaning out of time arpeggio. And this is a nice intro, depending on the type of tune. It works nicely on ballads, but it's also an intro that's used in I Will Survive, because there's a rubato introduction to that vocally as well. Anyway, let's listen to this. So just an out-of-time broken arpeggio like that can be very effective. Next example. Let's listen to this first and I'll explain you what's happening. So what we have here is what's called a turnaround. We're basically going 1, 6, 2, 5 to 1. And you can have the 6th chord be either dominant or minor. In this case, I'm using a dominant version with the flat 9. So 1, 6 or 6 dominant, 2 to 5. It works great as an intro, and it has a slightly jazzier feel. And in this case, I used a pedal, a dominant pedal throughout the whole thing, which really gives it a nice sort of jazz tension kind of feeling. But you don't have to use the pedal. You can also use the actual root notes for those chords. And you can also use the 3 chord as a substitute for the 1 chord. So I could have gone E minor 7, A7 flat 9, D minor 7, G7. And I did a G13 here with that E in it just for some extra color. But if you substitute that for the 3 chord, you get the nice cycle of fourths for the intro. 3, 6, 2, 5, E to A, and then A to D, and then D to G. So very effective. Let's look at the next example here. And this uses a secondary dominant. Let me play it for you. So secondary dominant because we're using that dominant 7 to lead to the next chord. Even though it's not going to the G, it's leading to a D minor. It's functioning like a secondary dominant. So the 2 dominant chord lends this intro a very nice distinctive quality. I like that sound of a 2 dominant chord. It's also nice to sometimes actually start your song on the 2 dominant instead of just hitting the tonic. It's a nice different color. It's a jazzier kind of feel. We're going to look at that in a moment. Let's go to the next example. And here we are, starting on the 2 chord. Let me play this for you. So the 1, 4, 3, 6 intro, it's great for songs that begin on the 2 chord. And that 2 chord can be either minor, like it is in this case, or it also works great for songs that begin on a 2 or 2 dominant chord. And that's a lot of Gershwin tunes are like that, like Our Love Is Here to Stay, for example, starts like that, or But Not For Me. So another effective intro. Let's move on now. And the next example, other ideas for intros. We can restate part of the beginning of either the verse, the chorus, or the bridge. It's very commonly used, like Let It Be by the Beatles. They play the first couple of bars of the actual song and then come in with the song. Same thing with Twist and Shout. They actually vamp on that 1-4-5 that they use throughout the verse. So you can play part of the beginning of a certain section of the song, maybe an identifiable section as the intro. You can use the last 4 bars of the song, or the last 8, depending on the tempo, and that's a very common ending. You just repeat the last 4 bars. And you can also create an intro that's unique from other parts of the song. Very effective as well. Let's look at some endings now. We have here, to start with, an ending that goes 1 to 4 back to 1. And this is a traditional folk and bluesy kind of ending. So I have a little pattern here where I'm going 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, and then I hit the 1 and do my ending here. Now the ending. It's a nice, very traditional feeling. And that works great if you do the 4 as a minor chord, F minor. That's the next example. It's got a very distinctive quality. So 1 to 4 minor back to 1. And alternatively, you can use 1 to 5 dominant back to 1. We could go C, G7 to C, which is a kind of a straight sound. And if you want to really get some nice color, use C to F minor over G back to C. We looked at that in our chord toolbox. It's a nice little interesting progression, but you can put that over G bass and that'll have a nice, totally different vibe to it. Next example here, let me play it for you. So that's really a nice little surprise, going from 1 to flat 6 to 1. It comes out of nowhere. Nice effective ending. And that can be dominant if you want, A flat, dominant 7. The next example is a variation where we go flat 6 to flat 7 to 1. Let's listen. And I like that because it has that feel of sort of climbing up to the tonic. And I'm going to leave you with another nice jazzy ending. Let's move on here, and this is really nice. You go 1 to the flat 3, to the flat 6, to flat 2, back to 1. So you got a nice little variety of endings to choose from there. Feel free to experiment, create your own. See you for more in the next video.